Google. Let's go get them again.
Welcome back to another episode of Sampling Samples, our first sampling samples of the year 2025. Hopefully the start of 2025 is going well for you today. We're delving into the brand of Viktor Rolf. We don't delve much into Viktor Rolf on this channel. My very first Viktor Rolf fragrance was Antidote. If anybody remembers that, it is still in my collection. I still have it. And it was one of the fragrances. It was back then, Viktor Rolf didn't have too many men's fragrances, honestly. So at that point, I was really, I loved Antidote, and I wondered where the brand was going with their branding, and alas, it went Spicebomb. So Viktor Rolf, of course, introduced a new release in 2024, which was called Spicebomb Dark Leather. So I love my leather-based fragrances. Spicebomb is a fragrance. As you can see, I have 4 bottles, as far as bottles in my collection. I don't think I have any others to unbox. I've dabbled into some that I don't have in front of me here. But honestly, I've dabbled into the older Spicebombs, right? This was where I kind of cut it off here with the Extreme, the original, and of course the fresh version, which is excellent. Spicebomb is one of those fragrances. Anybody that's been with me over the years, since 2009 on my channel, yes, I introduced Spicebomb to YouTube, the original, the OG, when I went to Europe and brought it back and reviewed it right away or spoke about it right away. I was obviously late on the other ones, but that's my new style now. But Spicebomb has never really grab the top 3 in my top 10 seasonal lists, right? It's always solid, and it's one of those fragrances that's kind of missing a little bit of je ne sais quoi for me personally to make it an excellent fragrance in the designer realm. It's very good, don't get me wrong, but when they introduced this flanker dark leather, that was something that really intrigued me. Is this going to be the darkest Spicebomb yet? Now, if you don't know me or my channel, welcome to the Robezoid channel. I'm your host, Mark, and you can hit that subscribe button. I do delve into, of course, sampling and full bottle reviews as well. I do unboxings, things like that. And smash that like button, much appreciated, especially even little samples like this. This was from Surrender It a Chance. So that is one of the websites that I get decants and samples. Most of the time, I'm not really sampling in the designer game. If it intrigues me, I blind buy it. It's not really a big risk for me. Now, something to be warned about this particular release is L'Oreal sent, which is the parent company of Viktor Rolf, sent this to influencers, especially on the TikTok genre, to basically market this fragrance. So be aware of, those big boxes. It was like a bigger box. It was like a fancy box in regards to the fragrance. So you can really tell which one got it for free. So you're gonna get that typical projection, longevity, it's beast mode, right? Compliments are great, it's sexy, it's so leathery. These over marketed influencer fragrances, you gotta be careful. And do what I do, right? This is like $5 to me, give or take. A little sample goes a long way, honestly. It's not a proper review, it's not the best way to review, but it is, something to give you as far as what I get a lot out of sampling personally for me. So I got like 2 or 3 wearings out of this thing. It is a one with an atomizer. I think this is 3 mils, give or take. And let's see what I got. So let's go under the hood. Let's take a look at some stats on this one. Release date, of course, 2024. Noses are Carlos Benim, Jean-Christophe Hérault. Basically, Spicebomb, I think those 2 made Spicebomb Extreme, if my Rolodex is correct, my Spicebomb Rolodex. It's been a while since I went into the Spicebomb Rolodex, so I might be wrong, but I believe those 2 created Extreme. So anybody that loves this one will get excited, obviously, with this one because it got penned by those. Big notes to my nose, nutmeg, cinnamon, and leather. So that is good news. That leather is one of the influential notes in this particular release. So I am wearing it today, so it is part of my testing. So let's delve into it. Let's actually end this little sample here and remind me of the introduction. So I'll wear it and drain it as per all sampling samples. There we go. Too fini. Okay. So, right off the bat, Spicebomb Dark Leather brings me to the OG. It brings me to the extreme version. So it's this kind of style that this fragrance is bringing me to, which is very good news because these are really the most popular releases of the brand. A lot of the flankers, the red and the green ones, as you can see, kind of void of those in my collection for good reason. So anybody that was disappointed that they kind of went away with the OG Spicebomb DNA, they're going to be happy that it has returned in this release. Now, immediately sniffing this fragrance though, one thing that I do have to mention is it's weird how a name of a fragrance kind of makes you kind of assume. And do I think this is a dark leather fragrance? Absolutely not. This is going to be tame. Right from first sniff, I already knew. I was like, oh, this is not going to be a rough and tumble leather. Like a Tom Ford release, we'll say in the designer realm, like the ombre leathers, right? They have a little more dustiness. They have a little more texture to them. This is going to be a smoothed out leather based fragrance. So it's not going to be what I wanted, a really robust leather with the Spicebomb DNA, which would be absolutely stunning. So immediately, the little air of disappointment in me. Again, I'm a fragrance reviewer, so at the same time, I have to look at everybody's palette and my personal palette and my thoughts, my preconceived thoughts with the name and the note breakdown and all that, and kind of mesh that in a fragrance review. So personally, yes, there was some disappointment. I do want textures. I want some rough and tumble leather. I do want low and high volumes with certain notes in a scent profile. Spicebomb, the original, and the extreme did that at times. So the older releases kind of gave you those volumes that I look for in fragrances. Now, there's nothing wrong with a fragrance that's smooth, and there is a time and a place for those type of fragrances, and then there's a time and place for fragrances that do have a little more texture, a little more volumes that go up and down and really kind of invigorate you as a fragrance reviewer. Now, this one comes out fairly smooth off the gate, and that is going to be the theme here in this fragrance. So, you know, when I'm watching fragrance reviews or reading fragrance reviews, there's key things that I'm looking at, and this is one of those, right? Anybody that's going in like I did and kind of hoping for something that's going to be rough and tumble, especially if your nose is in the same place that mine is, don't expect high textures from black pepper, incenses in the breakdown, tobacco, leather, things like that. You're not going to see those highs and lows. You're not going to feel those textures in the scent profile. So what I got immediately is this is going to be a fresh, spicy fragrance. So it's going to be in that fresh, spicy genre that the OG Spicebomb is kind of known for, right? It gave us that. Now you're going to get the spices here up top, mostly cinnamon, nutmeg. So that duo is coming through. There is a little pinch of that black pepper. Again, not too rough. And some people don't like their black peppers, you know, with that high texture note. So for those, it has a place in this fragrance, I'll say that. But I think the pepper here is the third wheel in the spice market. This is paired with a suede-like leather, and that's where I go, right? Think about 1 Million and the leather in 1 Million by Paco Rabanne, where, of course, it's muffled by a lot more things in the release, but I would compare, it's highly comparable to that. It doesn't have that. Some say it's like an offensive leather, right? Tuscan leather is offensive to some people. Me, it's a run-of-the-mill leather fragrance. It really doesn't have too much personality, but it just has enough for me to keep me entertained. This is like a scale lower than that. So it is a subtle leather. It's an inoffensive leather, right? It's they're putting leather in here, but they wanted to sell units at the same time. So they're trying to get that intrigue, but at the same time, they're kind of playing that, towing the line, right? It's designed to be pleasant. So anybody that's looking for dark leather Spicebomb, like I thought, you might come out disappointed. I'll be quite honest, but more noses are gonna enjoy this than the usual, right? If you had something that was a little more rough and tumble, you might not like it. So anyone thinking because of the name they will get darker Spice Bomb, I didn't feel it here, honestly. The textures aren't there. And it's not a bad thing. It's just a disappointment kind of thing for me. I feel like the original and the extreme have more texture to them, especially in the spicy genre. There's some slight sweetness here in this release as well, not listed, but it will remind you of the vanilla in the OG. But again, very subtle, not childish, just there, just enough to balance out the fragrance. Now into the mid and the dry down of the release, this fragrance turns the volume down. And the whole thing about it being very like you know, I like some fragrances that have like these kind of jumps, you know, like differences. And, you know, there's some that are badly made that they have jumps and then you're just like, oh, this doesn't work well. But some that do. This fragrance really just stays like this, and it kind of drops down and then it goes very linear as far as there's nothing jumping out at me, and it balances everything out in the back end of the release. The spices, even though didn't give me much texture up top, felt more into the balance of things, giving way to the suede-like leather into this dry down. So the spices were, you know, they were giving you some bite, we'll say, but there was still, you know, the volume wasn't super high. It was just a little schmitten of like a little bit of texture here with the spices. But then they started mellowing out and kind of going, okay, leather, it's your time to shine. But again, it's a suede-like leather into this dry down, and that is going to be your main focus as per the name. Now, the suede itself, more into the dry down, it felt like it had a little bit of texture, like a little worn feel to it. I would say slightly dusty, kind of that worn feel to it, and that could come from the incense. I wouldn't classify this darkness as smoke. I never got a smoky feeling out of this, and people see incense and they go straight to smoke. For me, no, it was more like a darkness, like a faint darkness, dustiness. And I didn't really get any smoky facets here. So towards the end of this fragrance, the spices are on their last leg. So it's fairly linear as a scent. Like the spices go in a three-dimensional downturn, basically, right? They're really almost primary up top. You're just like, oh, okay, these are like, you know, I'm used to these kind of spices. They're not hugely three-dimensional, like I said, but they're there and they're more primary. They do attack your nose a lot more. And then more towards the dry down, things start smoothing out and it's more balanced. The leather starts taking more of a primary role, and the spices start moving downwards. So there's not much development. That's pretty much the development I'm getting. Like everything in here stayed the same, but the spices start mellowing more and more with more time on my skin. Now, the thing is the note breakdown is quite interesting, right? I was looking for, you know, obviously that rough and tumble leather that I never got. There's tobacco in this note breakdown and incense. So that's a big trifecta. And I was hoping for those three to kind of stand out, to take charge. They never did in this release, honestly. The vanilla Q, even though still minor, shows its face here. And I felt a lavender and iris floral smoothness here. And that kind of, I think, helps the smoothness of this fragrance, even though both notes are not listed in this fragrance as far as the note breakdown go. So the blend itself is really good in this release, so even really good noses will miss those florals, those factors in this release, but I swear they're in there. Now again, subtle, but give the scent that smooth air to the fragrance. Tobacco and incense are pivotal here, however, don't expect any fireworks, and that's where I am here with this fragrance. They're very tame and mild, but what they do in spades is give this fragrance some depth. And there is some I feel like it's almost like empty depth, which is, you know, there's no textures. And then that's where it's kind of missing a little bit for me personally, is I do like those different three-dimensional tobacco-based fragrances, incense-based fragrances, even leather-based fragrances, where it gives me 2, 3, 4 things that a leather-based fragrance would bring me to. right? Leather kind of going smoky, but it's also smelling like, you know, a Hermes store or something like that, the leather in there. So you're getting like 3-4 things out of the, this is very much a designer fragrance through and through where there's not much personality to grasp on. So overall, don't expect heavy leather, dark leather as per the name. I'm gonna say no. It's smooth and subtle suede. Don't expect big pieces from the tobacco or the incense either. It's rather tame overall as a scent. It still gives you that inoffensive, fresh, spicy genre that the eau de toilette is known for. And with Master Noses at the helm, they did well with the blending. That's one thing that, again, just because it disappoints me in certain things and the things that I'm preconceived, that I'm thinking, okay, you know, Spicebomb is due for a really good release in my personal opinion. You know, I wanted something like when the name and the note breakdown, there's things that disappointed me quite a bit. But at the same time, I'm looking at it, you know, a spade's a spade, right? Is it a bad release? No, it smells quite nice. I like it, and it reminds me of the Spicebomb DNA, so that's a good thing. You know, it doesn't remind me of like a whole bunch of other designer fragrances, and you know exactly what it's trying to piggyback, and it's not a Viktor and Rolf anymore. If you blindfolded me and I smelt this, I would be like Viktor and Rolf Spicebomb, insert flanker name here. Yeah, so that's a good thing. That's a positive. Now, is it one of the better ones out of line? Ooh, I would probably classify this trifecta as the best of the, at least from what I've smelt. Those are the ones I got the big bottles of. And again, it's the older releases, right? I would put this one right under the Fresh here as the fourth wheel. So that's where I'm at with this release, that it's not a horrible release, but it's not a fireworks. It's the best of the brand. It's top 3. It's, you know, going for the crown. It's not there. It had the potential though, and that's where the disappointment comes in. Now let's take a look at seasons, day-night versatility, and performance. Seasons, of course, Spicebomb, you have to go fall and winter with this one. A little bit of spring, and I feel because how subtle, and we're gonna get into performance, but how subtle this fragrance is, I feel like some of these, and again, these two, I got mine at launch, this one, and this one's also very, very good. I feel like, you know, start of fall, I could start wearing this one and this one. So it's kind of in that redundancy. So because it's in that redundancy factor, you know, you could technically wear this at the start of fall and then start mellowing into these more into fall and winter. And then once you circle back into spring, that's where the Eau Fraiche, of course, discontinued. But this one could start us off into the Fraiche version. So that's where it's almost like a tweener of the Spicebomb series. Day or night, I feel this is day or night, right? Depending on the situation. Casual wear, I don't think I'd dress this one up. Date night, perhaps, with someone that you're already established with. I don't know, it all depends on that person, but I think this, even though very smooth, I don't know if that's the best first impression, unless she's into suede-like leather fragrances. That would be a good one with spiciness, but it might bring out the wrong thought process. So a date night with someone already established with you that likes this set, yeah, definitely casual wear. Versatility. The versatility in here, because of the lack of punch in it, and I mean by like texture and oomph and all that, it brings up its versatility. These fragrances are pretty versatile, and if you know me and my taste, like I like designer fragrances that kind of push the envelope just a little bit, right? Just enough to give me that personality. That's where, you know, stories get told, and that's what I love about perfumery. When you start selling things that kind of go run of the mill, you kind of start losing me a little bit. Now, this one doesn't lose me because it stays true to the DNA. Yeah, I wish it had more punch, yes, but the versatility is fairly average on this one. So once it gets cool, and let's say you don't own these and this is like your replacement for these, let's say, there's nothing wrong. The versatility is pretty average to this thing. It's actually pretty good. Now, performance. Now, the performance on this was a little disappointing. Honestly, longevity was 4 to 6 hours. Again, it's off a little sample. So again, take this, not a review, so sampling samples. There's a difference. Yes, I go into a lot more detail than your run-of-the-mill reviewer, but again, they get a free bottle, they review it the day of, right? I actually wore it 2-3 times, so at least I have 3 more times experience than them. Full-fledged review, you're getting several, 10 times more experience with the fragrance. I always say a fragrance review should be worn as a signature scent. As fragrance reviewers, we don't have time for that, right? Fragrance reviewers are throwing out stuff like this, like this, like that, and they can't go into these intricate details. So for me, longevity, 4 to 6 hours with my little sample. Below average projection, sits close to the skin after that first 60 minutes. So, you know, if you're expecting, again, with the name Dark Leather Spicebomb, you're like, okay, would it have done well in our little fragrance community if it was a rough and tumble leather? Like a big, bold leather with more longevity and projection? Absolutely. Our little community would be loving life. Now, and some reviewers are probably exaggerating all this kind of stuff, you know, compliment factor is it's beast mode, all that. However, the way it's made will sell more units. Now, again, people that are longevity and projection, honestly, it's all up to you, right? I'm judging it the way I've always judged fragrances since 2009 on this platform. I kind of know the gist when something's on fumes. I'm like, okay, this is towards the end of the life of it. So 4 to 6 hours below average projection, which is honestly not that great for a darker fragrance. But again, the theme of this fragrance review is subtle, right? It's lighter than the name portrays. So my final thoughts on Spicebomb Dark Leather, the newest flanker of the Viktor Rolf legendary line, of course, that sells well for them, is that this isn't much of a change from the original Spicebomb. And I mean that as a whole. It's not really worthy of the flanker name that they gave it, Dark Leather, honestly. They had a good idea with adding leather to the Spicebomb DNA. That's a great idea. It works well. It really does. But they just are too scared to offend anybody and lose those sales with the recipe. You start putting a Tuscan leather-esque leather in here and you're golden. But alas, they missed that mark. That's what I kind of wanted. Now, I don't mean like a raspberry, like make it a little more interesting, but like a little bit of smoke, you know, actually more smoke, right? Lots of smoke. Give me that. And you're golden, but the sales will dip. I understand. The DNA is okay. It is. It's pretty good. But I think as a real reviewer, not pushing the latest releases, I'd suggest the original Eau de Toilette, the Extreme, if that tickles your fancy. I would stick to the original ones. They're tried, tested, and true. And if you're looking for a powerhouse scent, this isn't that. And that's what a true reviewer wants to tell you, right? That's the gist of it, right? I told you, is it dark leather? No. Is it composed well? Yes. Is it a good designer fragrance? Absolutely. Is it something that I will add to my collection in the future? Maybe. Not in a rush though. This first impression really didn't, made it, skip the top 3. And I'm like, yeah. But it's probably a 4th. You got that 3rd wheel on a date. You can have a 4th wheel. Why not? But, this is what a real reviewer tells you. Good, bad, hopefully I help you. This kind of reminds me of Dolce & Gabbana, the 1 series, right? And their flankers. In performance, because they do have kind of poor performance. I think this one has better performance than a lot of the ones, but in uses too, right? I would wear the 1 and its flankers kind of like where this one fits in. That would be the best comparable line to this scent profile. Solid, but not game-breaking good. And it would be for those close encounters kind of scent profiles. A little more versatile for a darker scent. There's a lot of good positives here. Now, I have to give it a score, as I always do with Sampling Samples, because you never know when I'm ever going to talk about it again, if ever. Most likely I will, probably like 4 years down the line, because I'm in no rush to get this, unless 3 years from now they discontinue it and then I get FOMO and I buy it. That's pretty much what's going to happen. Now, if I had to give it a score currently, I would give it a solid 7 bottles out of 10. I think it's a very solid 7. And anybody that doesn't know my scoring is basically 8 is that threshold. 8 is I'm on the cusp of bottle worthy. Right now, I'm not in a rush. It's there. It's just knocking at the door of maybe I'll buy it. Maybe it'll get thrown in a mega haul of mine. In my opinion, it's a disappointing flanker, but there is some good. It didn't hit my expectations at all, you know, fully, but it's not a terrible release. And what I liked is that it has the original DNA. It gives you like a little teaser of it with leather, and I feel like it's such a good combination. Just a little more, I don't know, maybe they're opening it up for a Spicebomb Dark Leather Elixir, which actually has a big bold leather with some smoky nuances and some, you know, some used couch or a used purse or something like that, and it gives you that rough and tumble leather that I'm looking for. Maybe they're opening it up. I think 7 is a perfect score for it. It's right there. It's not great. It's not super bad. It's not super disappointing. It has some disappointing factors, but it also has some good factors to it as well. Now that you heard my take, I'd love to see yours in the comments below. A new release like this. What do you think about the newest Spicebomb release? Are you in the same side as me that give me a little more rough and tumble leather? I know it's going to hurt the sale units, and that's the double-edged sword of being a designer fragrance, but I'm looking forward to seeing the comments below and a new release on my channel. It's always nice to talk about them. And as always, a great import fragrance will make a lasting impression. Choose your scent wisely. Thanks for watching, YouTube. Have a good one.